Hello and welcome to Today in Brevard Sports. I'm Nessel.
And I'm Brian McCallum.
Thank you for joining us on this final Friday in May. Today we're going to introduce you to some local personalities who are both interesting and inspiring. We'll meet a local Walmart employee who does more than bring smiles to his customers' faces. Brian Sacco also makes a big difference in the lives of some local kids.
We'll also get to hear from a Merritt Island man who spent some of his childhood as a Major League bat boy. Jimmy Palermo has stories about meeting some of the best to ever play the game, stories that would make any baseball fan envious.
We'll also check in with Bob Freeman to see if there's any hope for surf this weekend.
And don't miss what Florida Today columnist Peter Kerasotis has to say. Peter will bring us up to date on some topics in the world of sports and his opinions on them.
This first story is very special to me. Brian Sacco works at the VR Walmart. I don't know if you've ever seen him, but I shop there. And I had seen him so many times, and it's just kind of a story you never know about people that you see every day. I just happened to overhear a coworker say that this guy was a black belt. And what's interesting is Brian is 4'6". He's a little bit shorter than most of us. So I started asking questions, and this is what I found out.
All right, so it's jab, jab, first jab. Go.
I'm 4 feet 6 inches tall. And karate has an advantage to everyone, big or small, tall or short, because martial arts in general, like karate, taekwondo, and all that, martial arts in general has a way of boosting self-esteem and confidence. I'm second-degree black belt. I had to go up, climb up through the color belt ranks, and of course, transition, learning everything. And I was invited to the leadership program by Mrs. Hoover, my instructor, and she invited me, and I was like, wow, you know. And when I became a black belt, I was also invited into the instructor training program, so I've been an instructor in training ever since. And when I made second-degree black belt, I made it my goal to become a certified instructor and open my own school.
Now, let it out.
He's always eager, he's always punctual, eager to learn new things, and is always like, bring it on. He welcomes the challenge for anything that we do. And he always is wanting to practice. And if I was open every day of the week, he would be here. That's the kind of person that I have found about Brian. So that's the kind of student that he is for me.
I like everything about it, working with kids, making a difference in their lives. And what I do is I work with them side by side, work with the warm-up drills, the kicking drills, or self-defense and stranger danger, and also work on fire safety. On the what we call a Mighty Kids class, ages 3.5 to 5, there are 4 kids in the beginners class, and I work on one-on-one with another student because he's autistic. I work one-on-one with him, and whenever I see him, they always come off the smile.
He is a volunteer for Palm Bay Elementary School, and he helps children learn how to read. And what parent wouldn't be proud knowing that they have somebody who's not only working with children in a martial arts school, but is also working with people in an elementary school? What parent, like I said, would not be proud to know that they have decided a black belt is taking their leadership skills and helping others? So that's, one thing that Brian is also very good about is giving back to the community. And that's what we believe in martial arts too, is not always taking, but giving back what was so freely given to us. And Brian definitely demonstrates that by going and helping others at Palm Bay Elementary School.
I'm going to college for business administration at Everest University. I'll be graduating in July with my associate's degree in business administration. And I work at the Walmart Supercenter in Vieira. I've been with Walmart almost 10 years now. In August it'll be 10 years. I work in the deli department. I use my martial arts attitude when I'm at work. Try to be happy, show my confidence, show respect for my fellow workers, and also respect for my customers, because customers are key to our business, and show respect for my customers, not going to come back. I'm representing, not only representing Mrs. Hoover's school, but also representing Walmart. I'd say about 95% of customers I come into contact with always smile. And some of we have repeat customers all the time, and they always say, "Oh, you're so nice, you made my day," and even without a smile. Sometimes if it's not really busy on the counter, or if it's just a customer and me, I strike up this little conversation, say how their day is going, how they're feeling today, and Just try to make them feel better. If the day is going bad, try to make them feel better.
You know, I really love that story. It just goes to show that you never know about people that you might see every day. Which reminds me, Brian, do you have any superhero powers that we don't know about?
I can slice ham and turkey with my laser vision.
Excellent. Well, I'll have to have that surgery,
Do it
and
often.
my eyes can do that too.
That's why I've never met Brian Sacco, because I just slice my own at home.
Excellent.
I wish, however, that I could play sports, like especially tennis. I had tennis in high school, and I made an A, but they wouldn't let me take the next tennis class, so I don't know what that means. But there are some guys and girls who play great tennis in Brevard County, and if you've read the paper, you know we've been honoring them this week, and some others. It's our All Space Coast teams. Of course, if Florida Today is running the spring sports All Space Coast teams, that means it's also time for spring football. And although you've missed most of the games in Brevard County, there is a big one tonight. At Cocoa Stadium at 7 o'clock, the Cocoa Tigers, the Class 3A defending state champions, play Mainland, one of the traditional powers in Florida football. It should be a great game, and it's a big stadium, so go out and watch that one. Once the football is over for the spring, the boys of summer take over, and Peter Kerasotis recently spoke to someone who knows plenty about the boys of summer, especially some of the famous names from the past, Jimmy Palermo of Merritt Island.
88-year-old Jimmy Palermo has a rich history in baseball, growing up in St. Louis, working in his parents' confectionery store, and then becoming a mascot, a bat boy, and then a clubhouse attendant for the St. Louis Browns, and also the St. Louis Cardinals were the team there at Sportsman's Park, where the tavern that he later operated for many years across the street from Sportsman's Park. So during that time, he got to know a lot of baseball players, interacting with Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig and Ted Williams. And then when he worked in his tavern, he got many historical bats that were brought over to him by a friend of his, including the bat that Stan Musial used to hit 5 home runs in one day over a doubleheader, and many other bats that he and his family now have. And some of them are going to be on display with the Cincinnati Reds all throughout this summer. Hank Aaron's bat, Willie Mays' bat, several other bats as well.
My mother and father had moved to Spring and Sullivan, across the street from the old Sportsman's Park. And a lot of the ball players used to come in and buy their chewing tobacco and stuff, and chewing gums and cigars and things like that.
Jimmy Palermo's association with the St. Louis Browns started when he was just a 5-6-year-old boy, when he was working in his parents' confectionery store, and one of the players took him over to be an assistant to the bat boy, which was called the mascot. The Browns had been on a losing streak. They won that day. So the manager asked that Jimmy come back, and from there started a relationship with the Browns that lasted until he was 18 years old.
The bat boy he was about 15 or 16 years old at the time. Well, when he got too old to be a bat boy, they made me the bat boy. I became the big wheel. So that's how I became the bat boy of the Browns.
As a young boy, Jimmy Palermo, working in the clubhouse for the St. Louis Browns, was asked to go to the visiting clubhouse and run an errand. Well, the visiting clubhouse was the New York Yankees, and it was the first time that he met Babe Ruth, did a favor for him, a favor that the Babe never forgot.
So I went down the steps, went into the visiting clubhouse, and who was sitting there at his locker was Babe Ruth. So he says, I want you to go upstairs and see if Tommy's got a bone up there for my bat. So I ran up and I asked Tommy Brown, I says, Tommy, I need a bone. He says, you need a bone? What kind of bone? He says, Babe Ruth wants a bone for his bats. Oh, he says, I know the bone you need. What they do with the bone, they put them down and harden the bat up and knock these seams down. So I gave it to the Babe, and there he was, boning his bats. He says, thanks for the bone. And when he says, now, you reach up in that locker and you get yourself $1 for helping me.
One of Jimmy Palermo's favorite players that he got to know through the years of working in the clubhouse was Lou Gehrig.
Lou Gehrig, God bless him, I love that man as if he was my best uncle. I knew him since I was a little boy until I became property manager of the Browns, and I had the visiting clubhouse. And he was called the Iron Man. And this one day when he came in to the visiting clubhouse, I was distributing all the stuff that the ball players needed, And here he came, and he was just a ghost of himself. And he tried to play that game, but he couldn't go through the whole game. Came in with the rest of the guys, took a shower, sat down in front of his locker, and he couldn't even hardly dress himself. Finally, he says, Jimmy, he says, will you, he was putting his socks on. He said, will you put my socks and my shoes on? And I damn near cried. I says, okay, and I helped him. I put his shoes on. He says, you're going to have to tie them for me too, because I can't do that. So all the other ball players had already gone. They were going to Philadelphia. And I had to get Ed Moran, who was the head of the black and white taxi cab that did all of the... So I says, can you hold up a cab for Lou Gehrig? He says, yeah, I can do that. So I helped him go to the taxi cab, and he could hardly walk. And got to the cab, helped him in the cab, said goodbye to him, and I damn near cried, because he was such a dear friend, and that was the last time I ever saw him. And it wasn't long after that, when he went to Philadelphia, he couldn't play, and he died not too many years after that. I was a mascot, I was the bat boy, I was the clubhouse boy. I umpired for almost 4 years professionally in the minor leagues. Came home, the Western League, I thought the Western League was going to take my option up when I come back out of the wars. But instead I went into the tavern business because my father had a heart attack, and my brother Joe asked me if I would come in with him, and I did. I ran the one right across the street from the old Sportsman's Park.
Jimmy Palermo's rich history with the game of baseball reaches all the way back to some of the greatest names in the game: Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig, Ted Williams. His brother-in-law, his wife's sister's husband, is Yogi Berra, also a St. Louis native. So many stories. 88-year-old Jim Palermo remembers them all and enjoys sharing them.
Peter, you wrote about the guy before we did the video story, Mr. Palermo, and to me what I really find fascinating is that, you know, we see these bats right now and he's up in age, but think back years ago, if he'd been a little kid like today's kid, if you got to meet Alex Rodriguez face to face, because he's meeting guys that to him were giants of the world. I just think that's a really interesting story. Thanks for bringing that to us.
Well, thank you. It's one of those stories that's just so much fun to do when you can talk to somebody and get that kind of history and the anecdotes that he has, helping Lou Gehrig get dressed and all those types of things. It was just a really, really interesting story for me to write.
Now, something else you've written about recently in another professional sport, the NBA is going on right now. We're working our way to finding out who the champion is, and some people think that maybe there's some predetermination. We've had a referee incident with some gambling a year or two ago. You see any signs here that make you think anything in particular?
Well, Brian, you know, normally I'm not much of a conspiracy theorist, and it's funny, you know, especially during college football season, I'll get these emails and someone will say, you know, such and such a referee's son-in-law went to this school, and you know, I find a hard time buying into all of that. But as I wrote the other day, the NBA had that incident with Tim Donaghy, which David Stern, the commissioner, called a rogue official, which I always found curious as to how he knows that this guy was a rogue official. And even, you know, how do you know he was a rogue official when you didn't even know what he was up to, gambling on games and throwing games and all those types of things as well. So now I do wonder about the NBA and all the attention, all the hype, all the promotion heading towards the NBA Finals has been from day one. LeBron James with the Cleveland Cavaliers and Kobe Bryant with the Los Angeles Lakers. It's obviously what the NBA has wanted. It's what the networks want. It's what advertisers want. Nike with its commercials with LeBron James and Kobe Bryant. And you know, I was thinking the other day, it's probably if that matchup was to happen in the NBA Finals, it would have been the biggest matchup of superstars since Bird and Magic Johnson and Larry Bird. You could argue 1991 Magic Johnson and Michael Jordan, but Michael Jordan had not really established his greatness by then. That was the first NBA championship he won, and then of course Magic Johnson later that same year announced that he was HIV positive. But you know, I've been watching these games, and after Game 3, I wrote the column where I just was talking about the officiating and the calls. And what was so surprising to me was going into Game 4, Dwight Howard through the postseason had 66 fouls, an average of 4.4 a game, whereas LeBron James going into that Game 4 had only 18 fouls in 11 games, averaging 1.6 per game. That to me is just a stunning statistic when these are the two best defensive players in the league. And when you've got good, aggressive defensive players, they're going to have fouls. But why is it that Dwight Howard seems to be having all the fouls and LeBron James isn't? And so I do wonder about things, and I do wonder especially with the NBA because of recent history with Tim Donaghy. And I have always felt like that was one of the most underreported stories. And you know, you look at ESPN, they have a financial relationship, a business relationship with the NBA. Just how much do we expect them to investigate what Tim Donaghy did and what the NBA knew about when they have a financial relationship with the league? So I do wonder, and I have wondered through this postseason, just what is going on with some of these calls. You know, one of the fans the other day had a sign up in the game, and it says that it goes, the Magic sixth man, the fans, the Cavaliers sixth man, the refs. And after I wrote that story, you know, I had to write it on deadline and even before the game ended. Since then, there's been a lot of things going on in cyberspace, a lot of speculation. I've got an SI.com story right here in front of me, written after I wrote my story. It says, Magic hoping that perception of LeBron doesn't become a reality. And it says, Dear Orlando Magic fans, I feel your paranoia. So other people in the media industry are seeing this. And it is a problem for the NBA. Perception of things being on the up and up is a problem.
Thank you, Peter. Enlightening as always. Well, after that rain last week, the weather is starting to finally settle into a more familiar summer pattern. But what about the surf? Local surf forecaster Bob Freeman tells us how the weekend looks.
Okay, thank you. Well, I don't see a whole lot on the horizons for surf this weekend. There are some swells out in our zone, but unfortunately the swell direction is actually moving away from the coast. Some of this in part to some strong offshore winds that we're going to have Friday night and Saturday morning. So here's what I see happening for Saturday. I expect surf to be shin high, could be longboardable at low tide, which will be in the mornings and late evenings at the best sandbars in the area, but I don't expect a whole lot of surf. Sunday doesn't look much better. The winds will come around a little bit out of the southeast, but there still just isn't much swell in the water. It's probably only running a couple of feet at about 4 seconds. That's not going to put much on our beaches. So it looks like a great beach weekend. Longboarders, you might be able to find a few waves to slide on around low tide, possibly early in the morning at their best breaks, but that's about it. So anyway, have a nice weekend. This is Bob Freeman for Florida Today.
Thank you, Bob, for that report. Others getting wet will be participants in the Pineapple Man Triathlon on Sunday. It's the 24th year for the event, which involves swimming, biking, and running. I'll be up way before my normal rise and shine time to be a part of a relay. I'll be swimming the 3/10 of a mile, and then I'll be handing out the awards at the end. We'll have highlights of the race on next week's show. The race starts at 7 a.m. on Sunday at Rickman Park in Melbourne Beach. The best areas for viewers will be at the transition area and the start-finish line.
Amateur fighters will get their time in the spotlight tonight at Melbourne's County Line Saloon. Promoters hope this fight night will be the first in a series of shows that could eventually involve amateur mixed martial arts fighters meeting in a cage. 8 fights in American kickboxing and submission grappling are on the card tonight. A pre-show begins at 5 p.m. and fighting begins at 8. The event is at the County Line at US 192 and 995. You can get more information on our website, floridatoday.com.
Wow, fighting, triathloning, maybe some surfing. There's really no shortage of things to do this weekend, is there?
No, and is triathloning a word?
You know, it's not, but I think it should be. So all you going out there to triathlon this weekend, good luck. Well, that's it for us this week. Thank you for joining us at Today in Brevard Sports. Join us next week for another look at sports news in your community.
We'll see you then.
Take care.